Welcome to Rings and Things, where we discuss Tolkien adaptations and texts.
We're just two hobbits from the Shire, one bringing the other along on this adventure.
I'm your host, Agnes, and this is my co-host,
recurring guest star,
JD. Today we're covering the final installment of Rings of Power to date. And like usual, we're going to be breaking up the episodes according to storyline. So first up, we have the dwarves in Khazad-dûm.
Yeah. So early on, a scene, King Durin, I said he orders his son's death. He orders something that would cause his son's death, but knowing it would. Slightly different, I suppose, but it was like a mining operation, I believe, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
And I think the dwarves like defected and turned against King Durin for this. I see why. Mm-hmm. It was nice. This scene, this early Khazad-dûm story, we see Elrond show up and ask Durin for aid. It is nice to see a reunion to them, but it felt like it was just to give them like a reunion at some point this season.
Yeah, which I didn't mind. I like Durin and Elrond together. They work so well.
Yeah, I do like them. Prince Durin gives a pretty good speech. I like it a lot. The dwarves really don't like Sauron. I didn't realize that he was so universally known and hated. I thought it was more of an elf thing. I'm not like this. Like this is just based off vibe. Like I didn't have any sort of textual. This is just what I got from watching the movies and so far in the like. I just don't think anybody mentioned Sauron in a dwarven kingdom, really, except for Gimli in Lord of the Rings. But by then, I feel like Sauron had a lot more time to establish himself in Middle-earth. So I don't know the history in the first age and the second age of the dwarves very well, though.
I don't think Sauron has had a lot of direct canonical contact with the dwarves up until this point. Definitely more in the Third Age. But here's my generous take for this, and I actually really believe this one. Remember I said earlier this episode that Sauron used to work for Aule?
Yes.
This is the dwarves' god's traitor.
Yeah, and that works really well.
I believe this. I think this is why the dwarves hate Sauron so much.
Yeah, they probably, when he fell from Aule's graces, were among the first people to hear about it.
Yeah, and they get Aule's side of things.
Yeah, yeah. So I thought the speech, it was just really cool. Like, I liked seeing that they hated Sauron too, but I just was worried. I was beginning to get worried that like this whole Sauron business, he was going to take over and manipulate everybody because, like, the men have a different relationship with Sauron, that's for sure,
Yeah, definitely.
But the elves and dwarves definitely have it right, and they are ready to destroy pretty much anything that Sauron has been around or touched or even looked at funny,
Yeah.
I think also, I haven't looked it up, but Prince Durin's actor is killing it with delivery again. When he gave the speech, I felt like, again, like I was watching a New Line Cinema film, like in the Lord of the Rings universe. Again, I didn't get this very much watching Rings of Power, but I did this during the speech. Yeah,
we'll talk about this more in our End of All Things at the end of the episode, but I completely agree. Prince Durin's speech was a highlight of this episode and of the show in general.
Yeah.
It was just such a well-written and well-delivered speech that it was a gem. It shone.
Yes.
So one of the things that King Durin says is that with the Dwarven Rings comes the potential to make it their mountain. I like this emphasis on the rings giving dominion over something. Like, obviously, King Durin is doing a questionable thing here with a questionable ring. I'm not saying that I approve of what he's doing, but I like the depiction of this, that what the ring is doing is offering domination.
Yeah, in our last episode, we were talking about how the ring gave him sight and a different relationship with the mountain, and the way that he was talking about it. And I thought about that discussion when I watched this scene when he said that he's going to make it their mountain. I was like, oh, okay. Like,
yeah, he's taking ownership of the mountain in a way that dwarves haven't owned the mountain before.
Yeah, they lived in the mountain, with the mountain almost.
Yeah, living with the mountain is what they've been doing. Now they're going to make the mountain theirs with this ring.
Prince Durin says to his father, take the ring off or I'll take your whole hand. It seems to be a theme.
Just run.
Do you think Durin should have ran? Or
I'm just saying that you're just running as a theme, and this is a theme.
Yeah.
So
me thinking people should run and people losing parts or all of their hands with the rings. Mm-hmm. I want to know that if he could see inside the mountain and all that with the ring, how could he not see the Balrog?
So, I was thinking about this, and I have a generous take.
Mm-hmm.
The ring truly shows the composition of the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
It shows him where he can dig and things like this, even if it's not where he should dig according to what the mountain wants. But the ring doesn't show all that is true.
It doesn't like give a detailed map of the mountain, just the outline of the mountain.
Yeah.
Just the mountain, and the Balrog's not the mountain, basically.
Or, there could be several machinations for how this works. Like, maybe it only shows the precise information that King Durin is asking for. And he hasn't asked, is there a monster in the mountain? Is there a Balrog in the mountain? So the ring hasn't shown him that. Or maybe the ring just doesn't show spiritual beings. Or maybe the ring, like you said, only shows the mountain for some reason. Although I don't like that one as much.
Yeah, well, like, I wonder if he could see if there were any animals that live in the mountain that would hamper him, like, I don't know, bats or a mole or something weird like that.
But a Maya might not show up if he's looking for bats.
Yeah, exactly. I like that the way, like, it didn't show how the ring looks, but I visualized it kind of like he could see through the mountain as like a 3D render and then see what happens, like see like where he could take from without just collapsing it and killing everybody, you know? And that's all he could see, though. But you said you didn't like that interpretation as much as the others. Is there any problems with the ring just showing him the mountain? Like, it just is too limited for a ring of power?
The ring of power is not made specifically to show the mountain. Like, that's not its sole function.
Yeah.
So
even the Dwarven rings, like, if a human put on a Dwarven ring, it would act like a human ring. I feel like the fact that they're Dwarven rings.
So let me answer from the lore, and then let's talk about what Rings of Power has done.
Okay.
So in the lore, the 9 and the 7 are the same type of ring. They're exactly the same.
Identical.
Yep. And the entire difference between how the rings behave is based on Dwarven nature versus human nature.
Got it. Okay.
So,
well, I want to say, even if that's the case, Dwarven nature, they have an innate sense of, like, the earth and the rock. They can, like sense rumblings way better than people. So I feel like it'd be that times a large factor, right?
But I'm sure it could do more than that. I'm sure it could help them purify gold or smith something really well.
Yeah.
It's not just limited to mountain viewing. It's not just an X-ray for the mountain.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't think it's anything in Dwarven nature about seeing Balrogs.
No.
I don't think so.
No, but I do like the idea that it enhances their nature. Their nature is more than just mining.
Well, and so Rings of Power, you said, had slight difference between the human and the Dwarven rings. It was that Sauron added more of his blood or something like that?
For the Dwarven rings, they were forged specifically for the dwarves in Rings of Power, and the 9 are forged specifically for the men in Rings of Power. And the difference in their craft is that for the dwarves, Sauron touched the mithril, and there was that element of deception, which, remember, I think both of those play a role. I think it's both and. I don't think it's either or. I think both of those play that role in corrupting the Dwarven rings.
Yeah.
But then for the rings for men, Sauron actually used his blood instead of mithril.
And I'll say also, if we're talking about, like, the way that the forgers of the ring end up affecting the creation, there was, like, direct violence and bloodshed from Sauron and torture to make Celebrimbor make the rings.
Yeah.
So, like, if Celebrimbor's deception affected the Dwarven rings a bit, then his being chained up to make the rings of men also had to affect it too, I would say.
The torture scene happened after the rings were made, didn't they?
Yeah, the torture. Okay, yeah, there were torture in the you're being locked up and forced to create the rings. There was he was being compelled to add the threat of violence.
Yeah, and any compulsion, any manipulation that went on the part of Sauron definitely was an ingredient in the rings for men.
Yeah.
The rings of men are no good.
Yeah, they seem like you know, if we're taking the stories of their creation, the 3 rings, there was still a bit of light deception from Sauron in helping them make it in his identity, and then the rings of dwarves had the more overt deception from Celebrimbor to the king and Sauron to Celebrimbor, and there was the Sauron's more in those rings.
Yep.
And then the Rings of Men, their story is just completely brutal, even compared to the Dwarven rings, which just had deception and treachery. You know, there was like there's violence and compulsion. You know,
exactly. So all of these ingredients, I agree, are ingredients for the Rings for Men. But compare this to, again, the book version, where all 16 are exactly the same.
Yeah, are they like just all made at the same time? Right there. Yeah.
And then Sauron later decides to give 7 to the dwarves and 9 to the men. So in the lore, if a human took a dwarven ring, exactly the same thing would happen as happened to the 9. He'd become the 10th ring wraith.
Yeah.
Now, what exactly the Rings of Power show would happen... Exactly what would happen in Rings of Power if a man took a dwarven ring is unclear to me, since the rings are substantially different.
I feel like they would be somehow the same still, like you said, even though they weren't forged at the same time. And I don't really have a good justification. I just feel like they would be a 10th ring wraith is a good answer still. Because there's enough corrupt. Maybe they would corrupt slower because there was enough treachery and Sauron in those rings. Now, if a human took an elven ring is a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know the answer to that one either, but my devil's advocate for what would happen with the Rings of Power show human taking a dwarven ring is that the invisibility factor for the human ring seems to be unique to the human rings. The dwarven rings didn't make people invisible. Remember, when the 16 in the books are all the same, the things that keep the dwarven rings from making dwarves invisible is dwarven nature. The dwarves are built to retain their physical presence, so the dwarven rings can't pull them into a spiritual world the way the human rings can. Got it.
Man, it's a lot to keep track of.
Yes.
So you're saying that would you say it's problematic or maybe a good change that the human and the dwarven rings are so different now? Is that problematic to you at all?
At all?
Does it step on I feel like because you have so many theories revolving around it, you seem like you very much care about the spiritual nature of dwarves, elves, men, hobbits, and how the rings and other things affect it.
I do. That is one of my favorite topics in the universe.
And this is a little bit stepping on it, but not as bad as other things.
Yeah. Of all the changes they've made to the metaphysics here, this one, honestly, the metaphysics with the dwarves just doesn't really bother me. Dwarven metaphysics is very interesting and very important to me, but for some reason the changes don't leave a bad flavor in my mouth the same way.
Yeah.
Do I have any problem with this? Yes, I do vaguely dislike the shifting of the weight from dwarven nature creating the difference in the rings to the rings being changed, but I also see some great payoffs here as well, that you have so many shades of gray to discuss the varying nature of the rings, especially in light of the question of exactly how questionable are the elven rings. I like the shades of gray that this creates for that particular question.
Well, and before this, you mentioned that the elven rings were still kind of a big question mark. Like, according to just, like, before Rings of Power lore, quote unquote. So,
there's going to be some disagreement about this, I think, among fans. That I would say that there's questionability readable in the text. I think it is a defensible reading of the text to come away from it and say that the elven rings are questionable. I think it's also a probably not unfair reading of the text to walk away and say the elven rings are not questionable. I just happen to fall on the elven rings are questionable side of this debate.
Yeah, I definitely feel that more that way. But I mean, most of the information I'm getting from you.
Yeah, you're getting a lot of my opinions. So try to look at the text and come to your own conclusions as we read the particular verbiage that surrounds passages about the Elven Rings, especially in the Silmarillion.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we're still a ways from the Silmarillion, but I am very excited to that is, I feel like, probably the threshold that will put you from a Tolkien fan to having some credibility as saying you're a bit of a Tolkien expert in a way, you know.
Yeah, I'd shy away from the term expert, but definitely there is a substantial difference between someone who has read and understands the Silmarillion and someone who hasn't.
Yeah, I mean, talking to, like, somebody who's only seen the movies, I feel like you could definitely say you're an expert. Not if you've read the books, but if you've read this Silmarillion. I wouldn't say that to, like, other Tolkien fans, though, maybe. There's
definitely a lot deeper than the Silmarillion, too.
Yeah, you mentioned there's that that encyclopedia that I'm excited to look through.
The History of Middle-earth.
Yes. All in all, returning back to Khazad-dûm, I like this depiction of the Balrog. It was cool.
Yeah, it's basically exactly like the New Line Cinema movies.
Yeah, he seemed a little bigger to me.
Well, the dwarves are a little smaller.
Yeah, that might be it.
So one of the things I noticed was that Elrond accuses Galadriel of only trying to save her ring a couple episodes ago when she gave up her ring.
Yeah.
And
I liked that a lot. It was interesting to think about.
And here's King Durin giving up his ring and jumping into death. Is he only trying to save his ring by going to fight the Balrog?
Now, I didn't think of this at all, but possibly.
I think it's a question that we are invited to ask anyway.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer to it, but I thought it was an interesting question.
I don't know, because I have a hard time. I ultimately disagreed with Elrond about Galadriel, but I don't know if I disagree with this about King Durin. He seemed more into his ring than Galadriel was by quite a bit.
Yeah, and his ring is more corruptive than Galadriel's
right, exactly.
by quite a bit. So I think Elrond's question to Galadriel is an invitation for us to ask that ourselves on behalf of King Durin.
Yeah, and I wonder, like, also, like, Elrond and Galadriel being elves and more in tune with motivations and the emotional nature of things, like, he could pick up on that, and it's just easier for us to see it in the dwarves where they're a bit more overt, and also their rings are more corrupted, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like an elf would notice a subtle corruption more than a human, or we could see in a dwarf.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is another example of someone giving up a ring of power that would fit into that greater pattern of, you got Galadriel, you got King Durin, you got Adar.
So let's say, did Adar give up the ring of power to also save it? I don't feel like that was a good interpretation of
I
that
don't think that fits with Adar. So that would set Adar apart from these other two, assuming we take that cynical view.
Yeah, I feel like Galadriel's is 50-50. King Durin's is more towards saving the ring, honestly, than anything else.
More data points will help this a lot.
I know this is backtracking. Did Adar wear the ring, Elven ring, at any point or no?
Yes, he did. He became more elvish when he did.
Yes, I remember now. I remember that now. Okay. All right, yeah. So he definitely got to taste the power of it, so to speak.
Absolutely.
So
he experienced it.
Very interesting.
And then the last dwarven scene we get this season brings up a succession question for the dwarves. Prince Durin's brother lays claim to the throne because he knows that King Durin disowned his brother.
Oh, they said it was... I thought they said other dwarven nobles.
Other dwarven nobles support his brother's claim to the throne.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. I like this, but I know successions can always be messy.
My problem with this is that Durin's brother has played no role up to this point. Mm-hmm. This is like the first we're hearing of him, as I recall.
Yeah, I thought they were just saying other nobles were pushing for it, because they heard he was disinherited. So I thought we were about to see, like, Durin's second cousin once removed or something try to push for it even.
No, I'm pretty sure that this is Durin's brother, who's got a claim to the throne because his older brother was disowned. My concern is that his brother just should have been in it more than in general, if this is the role he was going to play. I think if it was going to be a distant family member, having them come out of left field's fine, but if it's his immediate family, we should have seen more of this guy first. Yeah. But I am interested in the succession storyline, so, blow me away with it, please.
I thought it was a fun little addition on, because I was asking a question about what exactly the consequence of him disinheriting was, even though it seemed like they had so buried the hatchet and worked things out, it still ended up affecting things beyond King Durin's life even.
Yeah.
Which I did like that. The echoes of his actions speaking out past when he was alive in a way that he probably wouldn't have wanted.
Yeah, exactly. The next thread to address is the Harfoots.
There was a scene where the mercs are demanding payment, I believe, or something, and the evil wizard just kind of like flicks him out of the way. I thought it was kind of funny. I liked it. It was evil, but I liked it.
Yeah, turning on his former allies like that was definitely evil. His former allies were also potentially acting off script as well, though. Demanding payment was probably not part of the plan originally.
Yeah, it's kind of like I feel like a good way to be evil, but seem like you're just being just is like disproportionate response. Like, oh, you're asking for payment early, I'm gonna throw you into a wall. Like, it's like, but that it was for a reason. It wasn't like just pure evil. I'm gonna say, if this Dark Wizard is Saruman, this ruins the whole Stranger arc for me. At this point, there's no way that I was saying Gandalf, if this is Gandalf, would ever speak to him again after attacking the hobbits like he does. Yeah,
I agree. Gandalf would know that Saruman was already evil if this were Saruman.
Yeah. I just wouldn't be able to handle. It will like make me want to just completely disregard everything else. Like I really like, and since the start of season 2, I was still like, okay, this is leaning more towards Gandalf, but it's kind of interesting showing how Gandalf grew into who he was. It's why he's such a weird old man, that gives some weird off-putting vibes. It's because look at his origin story. I like it, right? But if this is Saruman's origin story, it's going to just completely defeat the purpose of any of that.
I'll talk about this more as we continue.
Yeah. So Poppy has a speech about things being lost forever, no matter how much we fight. She says this to cheer up the hobbit she meets, right after his home is attacked and they're running away. I believe it's, or is it to Nori? I forget which. Either way, this speech kind of goes over and it starts flashing over like everybody's story and how it applies to them. I think it's basically about cutting your losses and running away, which I kind of liked that,
Yeah.
I was like, okay, somebody's talking sense for once.
And it's a hobbit.
I think it parallels the problem with the elves' rings of power, even without putting Sauron's influence in it, just creating those rings. Their time is over. What is broke, and all they can do is build something. All we can do is build something new, is antithetical to the elves delaying decay.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is a great parallel to make, and fits right in with the themes that the show has been exploring all season.
Yeah, this was a high point in it. I wouldn't say it quite got me to the same resonance that I had with Lord of the Rings New Line Cinema film movies, but it was trying for that, and it almost made it.
Yeah, I thought this was one of the high points of Harfoot dialogue.
Yeah.
Overall, I feel like Harfoot dialogue is one of the hardest for me to listen to. I have a lot of problems with that. I have a lot of problems with Numenor dialogue. Like, those are the two bad ones.
They should have fit a wagon metaphor in the middle of this somewhere.
And I found the speech surprisingly inoffensive.
Yeah.
So, for me, for Harfoot dialogue, that's high praise.
Yeah. Surprisingly unoffensive.
I also found that the music had some nice time to shine during Poppy's speech and Nori leaving. I really felt the soundtrack. That really felt like New Line Cinema to me.
Yeah.
Because there's so many points in those movies where I'm just listening to the music, and the music is really carrying the weight of the film. And the score is good for Rings of Power, but I feel like there's so many scenes that just don't exist where the music is the main character. And there were some scenes here where the music really carried the weight in that same way. Yeah,
definitely. The soundtrack definitely was kind of a backseat for most of the show, except for now.
Yeah.
In this very scene where she's giving the speech.
Yep.
So we learned where the etymology of Gandalf. We learn where it comes from. It's Grand Elf in like a kind of weird hobbity accent. Is this the actual etymology?
Not exactly. So Gandalf is a name of one of the dwarves listed in Voluspa. That's a poem in the Poetic Edda about the Norse gods. Like, it exists in the primary world. Tolkien did not invent this name.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a couple of points in Rings of Power where the show has referred to a wand or a staff as a gand. This is also an Old Norse word, meaning, gandr is the word for wand or staff.
Oh, okay.
And Alf, or Alfr, the end of Gandalf's name, means elf in Old Norse.
So he's a wand elf, not a grand elf.
The primary world etymology for Gandalf, as it appears in an Old Norse poem, is wand elf.
But, so, okay, got it. I didn't know that Tolkien didn't invent the name Gandalf either.
He also didn't invent most of the names of the dwarves in The Hobbit. A whole bunch of them come from the same verse in this Old Norse poem.
Does this mean if I claim it's not from his book, I could name a character Gandalf if I'm claiming to use the same source that Tolkien named his Gandalf after in Norse myth?
I am not here to give legal advice, but if I were hearing this case, I would absolutely sympathize with your point of view.
Wow, interesting. I don't know if, like you said, I'll take that legal advice with a grain of salt, but I'm glad that I feel a little bit justified now.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of other names. There's Nori, Dory, Owen, Glowin, Dwalin. Not all of them are in the list of dwarves. There are a few that he added, but a surprising number of the dwarven names and Gandalf appear in this poem. It's really cool. I also want to point out that the word elf, at the time that we were naming a dwarf Gandalf, because notice that Gandalf's name was on a list of dwarves in this old poem. The word elf is a very broad term at the time that this Old Norse poem was being written. Elf just meant a lot of different mythical beings.
Pretty much before Tolkien, elf kind of meant a weird magical creature, generally speaking, right? Like, it wasn't explicitly anything besides that. Yeah,
there's a lot of ways to interpret the word elf. Jackson Crawford is a scholar of Old Norse literature and such, and he speculates that elf and dwarf could have been used to describe the same species of entity, in fact. The same types of beings could be described as elves and dwarves. Partly based on this idea that this dwarf in Voluspa was named Wand Elf.
Sorry. I just want to check. Doing the on-fly research isn't great, but dwarf and elf, were they the same word at some point?
I am not aware of that being the case.
Okay. I will put a pin in that, and that will be a very juicy appendix.
And just because I'm not aware of that being the case doesn't mean that it isn't.
Yeah. They just sound similar, so it wouldn't surprise me if they were. But I don't know that right now.
So, I wish the stranger had been Saruman.
I would have liked that better. I would have much preferred that.
I would have loved to have seen a pre-industrial Saruman getting to be friends with the hobbits and having an entirely good and treachery-free adventure to fall in love with his character and really regret seeing his fall later on.
Okay, all right, hear me out. Names are pretty flexible. What if Saruman gives Gandalf his name because he has it?
Hey, I'm here for it.
I know this is grasping at straws and hoping for it because it would be so much better if it was Saruman. Because you remind me of Gandalf reminds Saruman of Saruman during this stage of his life, right?
Yeah.
They could still go for it. They won't, but they could.
They won't go for it.
That would be too complicated, I feel like, for some audiences,
And entirely unnecessary to have brought Gandalf in that way.
Right.
So they won't go for it. They shouldn't go for it. But, anything to get me Saruman back.
I would still prefer that over the stranger just being Gandalf, even if it is confusing.
I don't hate this choice as much as some people seem to.
Mm-hmm.
But I am disappointed that it's not Saruman. I've been holding out hope for Saruman.
The way I put it, I said it was fine. I kind of expected it for like 6 episodes. Now there was just a few subtle things here and there that were like, this is more Gandalf-y, just the kind of kookiness of Gandalf, The stranger, once he started talking and having a lot more dialogue, I feel like it kind of slowly became obvious to me. The stranger being Gandalf's fine. Would have been better if it was Saruman. The Dark Wizard can't be Saruman, or that's what ruins it for me. And I've said this just a minute ago, but...
And I saw in an interview with the showrunners where they say that the Dark Wizard is not Saruman.
Good. Okay. That is great. Isn't Saruman Gandalf's superior? Shouldn't he already be somewhere in Middle-earth, or was that just an assumption I made?
So the Rings of Power show has made some changes from the lore on this as well. Strictly speaking, Gandalf doesn't come over in the Second Age in the primary version of this. One of the things that complicates this is Tolkien has a couple versions himself as to exactly when the wizards come over, and it depends on which version you're looking at. But regardless of that, Rings of Power still has made some changes. So... in one version, the blue wizards come over in the Second Age. I think Gandalf always comes over in the Third Age. So Gandalf coming over in the Second Age is pulling that up in the time frame a little bit. But exactly what relation to Saruman, it depends on which version you're reading. And I don't know what Rings of Power is doing with changing that.
So... was this explained at any point about what is the event that starts the Third Age?
The event that starts the Third Age is the Battle of the Last Alliance.
So the prologue to the Fellowship of the Ring?
At the point that Sauron is defeated at the end of the Battle of the Last Alliance is the shift in age.
I still am holding out hope that season 5 finale is just the prologue to the Fellowship of the Rings.
Yeah.
That's all I want from the show. and they better keep Saruman out. They better keep good on that. Say the Dark Wizard not being Saruman.
Well, we'll see if what I heard in the interview is true.
I feel like I know that the interview, that's reassuring, but there just seems to be a lot of parallels aesthetically between the Dark Wizard and Saruman.
I guess it goes to show you that aesthetics aren't everything, maybe.
Yeah. But I'm just a little bit worried because the show writers, are they going to fake out the audience like that? They weren't willing to fake out the audience with Gandalf, which they should have. Mm-hmm. But either way, we'll have to. I'm going to take that interview at its word, and we're going to see what's going to happen going forward once that's available to us. But yeah, it does kind of ruins a little bit of the magic knowing the stranger's identity, and also it not being Saruman. I agree.
Another thing I saw in an interview with the showrunners was that they said that they didn't know that the stranger was Gandalf until season 2.
Yeah, I could kind of tell. I mean, so they just had it could have been any of the Astari is what they meant by that, because he was at least known to be an Astari by the end of season 1.
Yeah.
But it could have been one of the Blue Wizards or Saruman, or...
If only they'd have chosen Saruman.
Yeah, I agree. I would have even liked the Blue Wizard better than friggin' Gandalf. I'm not the biggest Gandalf fan, though.
And to be fair, in some sense, this is a Blue Wizard. The Tolkien professor Corey Olsen describes it as Gandalf the Blue, because Gandalf is going into the East and taking on an Eastern storyline, kind of like a Blue Wizard. And
that might wrap up Gandalf the Grey didn't exist until the Third Age, but Gandalf the Blue existed.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know. To be seen, I suppose.
We'll see what they do with it. I absolutely hated the line, "The wizard does not find his staff, it finds him." It was so Harry Potter.
Yeah.
It made me cringe. This was terrible.
Tom made it work a bit, but yeah, if somebody had said it, somebody else had said it, and it's slightly Tom Bombadil's is portrayed in a way that his accent doesn't feel so high and mighty. But if it were anybody else saying that, it would have been way more cringe-inducing for sure.
Yeah.
But it still wasn't great. I'm not backing it up at all.
Finally, the version of the song that Tom and Gandalf sing at the end of the episode is more upbeat than the official version. The official version was used in the credits to one of the previous episodes.
Oh, okay.
And I really like that they get to sing a more upbeat version because Tom's a pretty upbeat guy in the books. And it felt more natural to have the song have that little more upbeat compared to the official version. Mm-hmm. I honestly wish I could listen to Tom and Gandalf sing the entire song.
Yeah.
Rather than just the little snippet we get. I love this song. I love both versions. I love what I hear Tom and Gandalf sing. I love the official version as well. And the song is just absolutely amazing. The walking song was the best thing to come out of season 1 of Rings of Power, and this Tom Bombadil song, I don't know that I would say it's the best thing, because season 2 has so much more to offer than season 1, but this song is a high point of season 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree. I wonder if somebody with better editing skills than I could somehow make, at least like splice together the two so that you have a full-length version with the part of Tom and Gandalf singing in it, you know?
Yeah, I don't know.
And then the rest of the is the official version. That's probably the closest we'll get if they didn't record the whole thing. But they might have just recorded it and are hiding it from us. That's what frustrates me sometimes about shows and stuff like that. It's like, why not just give us everything? Yeah,
I don't know. Next up, we have Numenor.
A lot happens in Numenor.
Yeah.
So it starts off, the Numenorians kind of get a letter, right? That Miriel's working with Sauron. Anybody who's loyal to her are considered an enemy of the state. All Numenorians are called upon to dispose of this threat, is what they say. And that is just such a bad idea. That is just saying anybody should kill this group of people has led to some of the worst atrocities. Like there's the big one that everyone knows, but like this specifically reminds me of the Rwandan genocide was kind of like this, where it was just everybody was told to start targeting this one specific group, and it was very nasty, you know. Mm-hmm. But there's been a lot of times where stuff like this happened. It's not a good recipe. Just asking anybody and everybody to start attacking. It gets really, really ugly really fast, which we kind of see a bit of.
Yeah, and
so. Maybe this is an unintended consequence of me saying over and over, tell everyone that Sauron is Sauron.
Yeah, so maybe this was a good reason to hide it.
Yeah. Well, they hid it from the people that needed to know and told the people who shouldn't have known.
The Palantir told Pharazôn.
Oh, did it? Okay.
Yeah, Pharazôn got this information from the Palantir.
I thought they were reading a letter that came from Middle-earth, and I thought Galadriel was like, okay, we'll trust Miriel with this information, and it got intercepted by Pharazôn. But I think I assumed a lot of that and misunderstood the Palantir scene.
Yeah, at least that was how I understood it. It was at the end of episode 6 that Pharazôn used the Palantir and saw that Halbrand was Sauron.
I remember him using the Palantir. I think I misinterpreted it, or misunderstood might be a better way to... I think I misunderstood what that scene was. But I definitely remember him using it and freaking out.
Yeah. And this is... the Pharazôn hypocrisy, that he's getting this information from the magic elf stone that Miriel has been deposed for using.
Yeah, well, he doesn't trust Miriel using the magic elf stone. He's okay.
Yeah, but the society at large disapproves of using the magic elf stone.
He wouldn't tell anybody, but...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he's an upstanding, honest, honorable guy.
Yeah. Pharazôn still, for me, I really like him as a villain too, just in that he doesn't have what Sauron has in this depiction of Sauron, at least. Like, he doesn't really have a guiding, like, moral compass. He's just, like, he's almost like a more charismatic Wormtongue, you know? Like, he's just a creep doing whatever he can to get more power.
I can see that interpretation. I can also see where he is, in his mind, being a loyal servant of Numenor.
I don't read his character that way personally.
I can understand other readings of it, but I could see a reading where he's a loyal servant of Numenor in his own mind.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's a corrupt politician, but I can see where he tells himself.
I think he knows that that's just his cover story, and probably would tell somebody like that he was like personally close with, even like one of his allies or something. He's like, or like a very close dear friend if he had one, which we don't see him having any of that. He doesn't believe that he's a servant of Numenor. He just knows that he could say that, and that's a good farce. That's a good facade. I think he doesn't believe that at all. But if something comes out later, I could be wrong on that. I just don't see it from him.
Yeah.
So Elendil has a scene where he is talking with his daughter, and she covers for him, but she was doing a terrible job of keeping that soldier from suspecting that she's hiding someone. I felt like she was just getting very angry and like going on and on. Like, she was not diffusing it at all. Like, just escalation.
Yeah, she was being very suspicious.
Yeah, it was not good.
So I have a bit of a deep dive on this scene, actually, that I want to take. Regarding our ongoing conversation about lying and the truth.
Sure.
So Aarion hides her father in the house, and then she tells the guard there are no faithful in the house. Now, I see a couple different ways to interpret this scene. On the one hand, perhaps she knows her father will have left through the house by the time she says that, and so maybe she has a sense that what she is saying is true. Or perhaps she intended to lie. And in that case, if she intended to lie, the shot of Elendil not being in the house shows us that what she has told is still truth, with a capital T. Like, what she has said, even though she intended to lie, is actually the case.
Yeah.
And I thought this was a thoughtful take on the ends of saving her father versus the means of what she may have been lying about. That a good end was resulted. And even if she intended bad means, she didn't quite end up using bad means. Bad means couldn't get her a good result.
Yeah, it's kind of so... This whole... You're not lying if you think you're telling the truth, even if you're wrong. But then also you're not lying if you think you're lying, but it turns out you're telling the truth. I feel like you can't have it both ways, though. Like, if she was intending to lie, even if she was accidentally telling the truth, that feels like it should still be counted as a lie. Or the other way around.
I agree that in a subjective sense, if she intended to tell a lie, she told a lie in that subjective sense. But I think it's like I said, I think this was a thoughtful take, because it really plies that question of what are your means? You intended to tell a lie, possibly, in which case in some subjective sense it is a lie.
Yeah.
But also in the objective sense, what you said was true, and a good end flows from truth-telling.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
I think that I know this is a bit of a hot take, especially probably amongst like diehard Tolkien fans. I think it's a bit more just relative to that. For like, I think she was unequivocally lying, or even thought she was unequivocally lying when she objectively wasn't. And I think it's okay to lie when there's a murderer looking for a family member at your house, personally. Like, I just don't see, like, and this goes back to Kant. Kant has the, I think he called it an absolute moral imperative, is the way and that is to never lie, no matter what. And somebody even asked him, like, what if there's an axe murderer asking if there are any kids so he could kill them at your door? Would you lie then? And, you know, he would say, no, but I would lock the door and run out the back, something like that, right? But he said, no, I wouldn't tell him that the kids I wouldn't tell him that the kids aren't here when they were, because he could go off, and then if he killed my wife, I would be responsible for that. Whereas if I did anything else and didn't lie to him and he went off and killed my wife, that wouldn't be my responsibility, whatever. I think ultimately there are certain times where it's okay to, I'm not like, I don't want to go on the stand as being pro-lying or anything. Like,
no, of course not.
Avoid it if possible, but there are times where it's unavoidable and the right thing to do, or the lesser evil, which I know lesser evil isn't with the themes of Lord of the Rings, but there are times where it's truly like scales different, like, you know, murdering somebody versus telling a lie is one of them. I feel like, you know,
I think there's usually a different way to frame the situation than lesser of evils.
Yeah. I still feel like
if you end up in that kind of situation.
I feel like it's to the point where it's like a negligible amount of like lying isn't great, but I don't think in this circumstance that the amount of not greatness that is amounts to getting your in the show's example, your father out alive from a mass purging of political dissidents.
I think one of the differences here is the cultural shift that we have regarding truth-telling.
Yeah.
So Lord of the Rings is meant to be a more medieval tale, where truth-telling is held to be a more sacred thing.
Yeah, definitely. And that's absolutely the case. But also I feel like a lot of the absolutist morality of like people who tend to believe like Kantian ethics and stuff like that, they believe, you know, also it's a universal thing. Like, it's in any circumstance, and it doesn't matter if it's the medieval era where society sees it as good, as honorable and right, or if you're in the modern era where your word doesn't mean anything, it's still categorically imperative to never lie, you know. Like, and I'm not saying that's where you or Tolkien or anyone else stands, because I think we discussed Kant and Tolkien. This might have been an appendix, so if
it wasn't an appendix, yes.
Okay, so we discussed this in one of our appendix, dear listeners, if you're listening and have no idea what I'm talking about. But if like I don't like I'm there are differences between, so what I could tell, the medieval ethics and Kant's ethics as well, you know, in what they consider a lie.
Absolutely.
And stuff like that. So, but for me, I just feel like I'm a little bit more loose with it, I guess. I think it's completely understandable. Even if he was in the house and she said, and she knew he wasn't in the house and she said he wasn't in the house, the amount of harm she's mitigating by lying, even if that's not the right thing to do, is so much greater that it's just, you know, I feel like it would be worse for her to tell the truth and even stand and try to stop them from going in, because then they would still be able to catch him, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's also possible that she knew her father was going to be out of the house by the time she said it.
Yeah, and it's a good workaround, but I feel like also the other thing is her I always have trouble pronouncing her name. Arian. She's kind of had a morally gray compass to start anyway, so I feel like she
absolutely
is fine with lying anyway.
But I'm looking at the greater pattern of lying in the show overall, because like we had Prince Durin lying about the customs surrounding a table so that he could get a piece of stone. Yeah. Entirely unjustified.
Yeah, that was just completely played for laughs and then dropped.
Yeah.
Too.
Compared to this one, compared to Disa lying to Elrond, you know, there's been lots of
lying. There's a lot of different ways
compared to our deceiver.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, he tells the least amount of lies, it feels like.
I know, right?
he tells a lot of truths, he tells deceptive stories with them.
So in the greater context of discussing truth-telling and lying in the themes of this show, I thought here was some analysis.
I know this is like a very classical philosophy, like because of like hypothetical, and I just feel like my answer to it, and I stand by it, is like it's just okay to lie sometimes, and I know that it shouldn't be anybody's first choice.
But I think by showing that Elendil was out of the house,
the
show is saying that it's okay to say that in this circumstance.
Because he wasn't, yeah.
Yeah, because the universe saw to it that what she told was the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I still wouldn't. I still think this would have been a good turn for Arian to kind of. That I think maybe that's why I like redemption arcs, is because morally gray characters turning good are still getting out of the habit of being morally gray. Mm-hmm. So they kind of get. I feel like it's a loophole in the ends justifying the means. Like, it's not the ends justifying the means. They're just stuck in their old ways and unlearning it. So she's still a little bit deceitful, but she's starting to do it for good. And there's going to be a tragic ending to it all, I'm sure. But she's turning to good still.
Yeah, it's making better choices than she has been.
Exactly, and I think that's why I always love a well done redemption arc where a character is there's a point where they are somewhere in the middle. Like, it's a lot different than what we have with Sauron, where it's a character who's convinced they're good, saying the ends justify the means. It's more like this character did the right thing the wrong way, but it's because they don't know how to do it the right way yet.
Yeah, and that's a great point.
Yeah, but I still, it does ultimately, the universe gave her a free pass by having Elendil escape the house when she said it. So maybe things are looking up for her. Maybe it won't end in tragedy. Although I think every Numenorian is going to end in tragedy here in a minute.
A lot of them, yeah.
Also, we see Elendil ends up, he meets up with some of the other people who are on the run, and he gets Narsil, right?
Yeah, he does. That is Narsil.
Yeah, they say it by name, and I recognized it, and I'm just so excited. Like I said, maybe it's just because I really need the prologue scene, and this is one of the pieces of the puzzle,
Yep, and there it is. Yep. Finally, we need to wrap up Pelargir.
Yes. So, for a second here, I thought Isildur was getting ready to go to Numenor, and it looked like Theo was going with them. But Theo's just helping send them off, it seems, right?
Yeah. Isildur and Theo have a little heart-to-heart where they talk about their feelings and such, and it was a very touching scene. I really liked it. I could really see Isildur grow as a person over the course of this season, and I thought that this interaction was really well written and well acted.
Yes, and seeing Isildur, they gave him a lot of space and time to grow, because I was looking at him in season 1 and wondering how this is going to be the guy who almost defeats Sauron.
Yeah, but
I'm starting to see it. I'm starting to see a bit of it.
Yeah, exactly. You're starting to see who you're starting to see the great Isildur that he will eventually become.
Right. Yes. So there's Caiman, right? The son of Pharazôn. Kemen, the son of Pharazôn, sees Isildur, and I just have to think he's probably terrified because
he's a coward.
Yeah, well, he thought they were going to die. Like, he thought he was gone and a problem not to worry about, and all of a sudden he's here. And his entire family is kind of a big sticking point. Yep. Yeah, Pharazôn's son, they kind of are interesting foils in, how cool of a villain Pharazôn is and how hateable his son is, Mm-hmm. Just really, a nasty guy. So I do have a second hot take after my Adar one. But so it's another comparison too. This deal to Southlanders who fled Adar and are getting the ones, what they're getting from the Numenorians reminds me, it seems like nearly allegorical, but at least an application. It's correlated to the British in World War One. They promised the nation states of Arabs to be free from the Ottoman Empire and their own independence, and then they signed the Sykes-Picot Agreement with the French, dividing up the Ottoman lands between England and France and not leaving any room for independent autonomous states. They were seen as acts of betrayal. The only difference I could think is that there was a whole bureaucracy in the British Empire, and some of those, they didn't have the Queen of England on the ground fighting and promising this. It was Lawrence of Arabia. That was the whole guy's deal, and he was the one who ended up promising to them their independence, and he really intended on fighting for that the best he could, but he couldn't guarantee it, So the Numenorians were promised by a queen who fully intended it to it and didn't have any other promises that she made that contradicted it. And it's just that she lost power, and now the Numenorians, the new people in charge, are taking the power away. That's not exactly what happened historically with the Middle East in World War One.
Yeah, the reason the promise is getting broken is a little different.
Yeah, but there are parallels to that, especially in democracies and alliance changes where I don't want to get into specific examples because I don't have enough research done, but I know that there was a few times America has done this in the 20th century too, where a party got elected and they changed platforms and suddenly stopped supporting a side of a conflict. Mm-hmm. That's closer to what that is, but just the way that they were kind of roused to fight against this evil empire, and now they're colonial subjects to the Numenorians, really reminded me of that.
Mm-hmm. And in the books, the fall of Numenor takes a long time, but mm-hmm. the Numenorians definitely have a colonialist era in their downfall trajectory, which is absolutely applicable to British history.
Yeah. Late stage Numenor sounds like it's going to sound a lot like late stage Britain, the British Empire.
Oh no. Late stage Britain did not have human sacrifice.
Maybe they did. No, I'm just kidding. No, I just mean that there's going to be a lot of applicability there, not a quite 1-to-1.
I just think Numenor falls farther than Britain ever did. And the colonialism certainly happens and is being represented here, but this happened several hundred years previously mm-hmm. to the fall of Numenor, and
Got it.
Numenor continues to fall past that.
Well, I mean, I have seen some pretty crazy stuff about the British royal family online, but I don't know if any of it's true or not.
So, finally, things must be really awkward now between Estrid and her fiancé after Isildur invites Estrid to come to Numenor with him right in front of him.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole Estrid line has kind of been very messy, very complicated.
Yeah. She definitely needs to figure out who she's going to be betrothed to, because this is not a sustainable, honorable situation that they find themselves in.
Yeah, she needs to buy a manifest to one ship and sail it.
So I think that does it for our rings.
Yes.
Let us do our things. First up, we have a lot of quotes to discuss. Yeah,
there was a couple of these two. I just want to say generally, and we'll get more to this. These last two episodes are really good, and I had a lot of good quotes to include as well. One, Celebrimbor says, "You truly are the great deceiver. You even deceive yourself." It's like just a good payoff for their whole conflict and everything. It's a very delicious line of dialogue placed in the perfect time.
Mm-hmm. And this is good reason to believe that subjective statements that Sauron makes are probably true from his perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, often they probably are. Yeah.
I love this point too. Just always deceiving.
So they mention twice that strength does not come over darkness but light. Celebrimbor says this first, and Galadriel adopts it from her. I'm gonna be a little bit, but technically, and say that light also creates shadow and darkness.
I think that's fair. This reminds me of that's not how buoyancy works.
Yeah.
So the quote goes, "It is not strength that overcomes darkness, but light. Armies may arise, hearts may fall, yet still light endures and is mightier than strength. For in its presence all darkness must flee." That's what Celebrimbor says at first in its full context, and then Galadriel references that again later at the end to Gil-galad.
It's slightly better than buoyancy just because it's at least poetically sound.
Yeah, I agree that this is better than the buoyancy one, but you are technically correct about the relationship between darkness, light, and shadow.
Yes. Yeah.
I think I'd rather deal with shadow than darkness, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you have a very intense light that's big enough and then big enough objects casting big enough shadows, it might be darkness to a subjective onlooker, depending where they stand, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to say. You want like a very muted light and then from a lot of angles. Mm-hmm. Which actually, now that I'm thinking about this metaphysically, kind of is my worldview. Like you want more light sources, not more intense light.
Yeah.
You want a lot of different angles to be pouring out light.
If we get enough lights that are dim enough, then this quote works for you.
Yeah. It's not. You don't want one bright light. That's for sure. Because that will not get rid of darkness completely. I mean, maybe enough though. You know. Mm-hmm. But I think if you want to be talking about eradicating darkness, you need an ambient light from many sources. All about the same brightness.
Would it cast many shadows then?
Yeah, but it won't. So technically, yes, but it won't look like it because the light will be on the shadow, but there will be like different hues and gradients, but there won't be any pure dark shadows. And I'm not even talking about this metaphysically. I'm kind of just talking about it from like I guess you could call it physics or dynamic sense. Yeah. Again, also that works kind of for my metaphor too.
Yeah.
The shadows are technically still there, but they're very much brightened. I don't know. I don't know, man. I could see it going either way, though, where now you're saying, like, well, now you got shades of gray and complex morality, which I also don't want to endorse, you know, like, wrong is wrong. So I don't know. I'm going to have to workshop this a little bit.
Wrong is wrong, but there's also shades of gray.
Yeah.
It's both. But what this quote doesn't do is tell us the conclusion of what Gil-galad wants to know.
Yeah, they ask, so what's it going to be? They're deciding if they should go defend or attack, sword or shield. And she says, strength doesn't come over darkness but light. Like, okay, but are you going to be not strong but lightful in a castle or on the field? Like, come on, I want to know what I'm going to be seeing happen. Like, it has no bearing to the question that was just asked.
Exactly.
That bugged me too. That being said, I still think the quote was pretty good. Especially when Celebrimbor said it made sense. I feel like Galadriel's kind of misapplying it.
Yeah.
We get the Dark Wizard and Nori. Yeah, the Dark Wizard asks, you pity him whose blade was at your throat? And she simply answers, yes. I love it.
It's very simple.
Yeah, like, I do pity him. I feel bad for him. That's sad.
Mm-hmm. I also liked one of the Dark Wizard's quotes. He says, I only hope losing those you care for most will give you a taste of the suffering all Middle-earth will know should Sauron prove victorious. And I feel like this is a great example of ends justify means that feel especially applicable to the real world. When people say, well, this is how the world is, so I get to do this to you. I'm thinking like trivial things like when you say the world isn't fair, so I'm not going to be fair in this instance. Yeah. You know, like I'm not even talking about grand wizards. I'm talking like workplace hostility and
when people say life isn't fair, when they're, I don't know, stealing your seat at a show or something.
Yeah, that's a great example. And well, life's not fair. I got this, even though it's rightfully yours. I'm going to keep it. Or I feel like it's when you do something bad and the justification is to teach you something.
Yeah,
like that's the common thread I'm seeing here. Yeah,
no, there is a lot of stuff where people justify how messed up the world is for what, first of all, people say like, oh, how minor is it that what I'm doing when, there's so much worse out there, first of all. But more direct to the quote you're using is like people like, and this happens a lot with kids too. Like people say life isn't fair to kids a lot. Like when something that they think is unfair happens, instead of like, there are ways to kind of say like, to teach a kid in a moment like that without actually just saying life isn't fair, so what I did is okay,
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly the kind of thing I'm thinking of, is like that petty kind of cruelty there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's I mean, that's also not exactly what the Dark Wizard's saying, but he's saying like, I hope that Sauron ruins your life so that you hate him as much as I do, more or less.
What I got out of what the Dark Wizard was doing was he was saying, I'm going to hurt you in this relatively small way, in the Dark Wizard's opinion. You know, I'm going to kill these nobody companions of yours, and I'm going to hurt you in this way so that you will see that the evil that
You're right. Yeah.
will be done upon everyone else. Imagine everyone losing their friends like you lost your friends. Don't you want to stop that? That's what Sauron's going to do. I'm really sorry I had to do this to you to teach you this lesson, but life isn't fair.
Yeah.
So, like, that's the common thread I'm seeing here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely... I've seen this in bigger senses, like in different circles too, if you apply it, like in like politics and stuff like that. It reminds me a lot, even though it's not exactly a parallel, like people saying, you know, there's so much going on in the world, how are we supposed to care about your personal problems? Like oh, you're depressed, but there's a war going on in so and so country or something like that. It kind of has a similar vein of thought, you know.
Yeah.
Like it's the taking the suffering of the all, like everybody, and then trying to use that to diminish the suffering of one, you know. In a way, his is future tense, and the other one, my example's past tense, but I see it all the time.
Yeah.
You know?
It's just that this quote feels very real. It feels like it's the real everyday type of
nasty. Evil. It's a nasty quote, but it's nasty because it is real, I think.
Yeah, but I think it expresses it well. I think it's poignant. Like, obviously, it's talking about something bad, but I think it's expressed well.
Yeah, definitely. It's art. It's showing, you know, life and its cruelty and how the people who do that cruelty think.
Yeah.
And you know, sometimes ourselves, too, you know, not just others.
For sure. Last quote I wanted to talk about was Celebrimbor's death speech. But the rings are beyond your reach, as I shall be ere long. For soon I shall go to the shores of the morning, borne hence by a wind that you can never follow. Hear me, Shadow of Morgoth, hear the dying words of Celebrimbor. The rings of power shall destroy you, and in the end I foresee one alone shall prove your utter ruin. And then later on in the conversation, Celebrimbor brings up the difference between being the creator and master of the rings and being the prisoner of the rings.
Yes. I thought Celebrimbor, I don't know if it's like, it kind of reminds me when we're discussing it, like when people are on their deathbed, they'll get like a sudden last hour of extreme lucidity and hyper awareness and being really in touch with things. I feel like we got that from Celebrimbor in a way. Like he just was really on it after waking up, and compared to like this whole last season, like he was very on the pulse, like, and had amazing, impressive, intelligent, beautiful things to say.
Yeah,
all the time. Like he was just, and this was one of them that I really like. It opened my eyes to see how far Celebrimbor has fallen this season. I feel like we didn't see enough of him like this before. You know, I feel like not to like get in the writer's room, but like they should have had him dealing with some conflict of some sort in season 1 that was a little bit more existential, and had him like rise to the occasion to just get a bit more of this energy from him before we see him fall to Sauron.
Yeah. First, it's not uncommon for foretellings to come upon people right before they die in the Legendarium. That's kind of a motif, and I think it even extends beyond the Legendarium into like medieval literature that this is a thing. Yeah, they get a sudden prophecy or something. Exactly.
Yeah,
but also I also agree with you that having seen more of Celebrimbor in season 1 would have probably been some good use of screen time. I
felt like in season 1 he kind of gave me the same energy as Gilgalad, and I felt like they were both trying to just like...
Well, he was plotting with them apparently to make a forge to, you know, find out about Mithril, and I mean he was kind of already fallen then.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. Like I just felt like they were both kind of like foils to Elrond's like nobility and purity. They both felt like scummy leaders, you know? Yeah.
And like Celebrimbor in the books, my impression of him, of course, you know, the picture we get is so vague that much of the impression of these characters is very subjective. Mm-hmm. My impression of Celebrimbor is that he was a fine, noble, upstanding, good person. He made some very profound, fatal mistakes working with Sauron, and then redeems himself at the end.
Yeah.
And I feel like this, in Season 2, I feel like Season 2 Celebrimbor really follows that trajectory.
Yeah.
But Season 1 Celebrimbor, I have more questions about where he is on that moral trajectory when he's trying to do this deceptive thing about Mithril with Gil-galad.
Yeah, he's already on the downfall, and I think the Mithril is the start of it all. And I stand by, like, I think Mithril, as far as I know, like, the only exception is the most direct one outside of the extended universe, where the Mithril coat that Frodo has, and Bilbo as well.
Yep. Thorin gives it to Bilbo in the throes of dragon sickness. That's what he gives up.
So it doesn't corrupt the hobbits at all, but I feel like every time the dwarves interact with Mithril or the elves that we've seen, they get some sort of sickness to it.
Well, I'm saying Thorin gave up the Mithril coat to Bilbo, even though he was, like, super dragon sick.
Yeah.
He was like, here's your... he gave it to him and even let him go with it. And if Mithril were corrupting, I would think that would be one of the things that he would withhold rather than give away to a burglar he's angry at.
Yeah, there's some nuts and bolts to work out, but I feel like the dwarves, more than once have had settlements go to ruin because they were trying to mine Mithril so deeply. One of them we just had seen, I think.
There's also Mithril in the writing of the Elven dwarves at Moria, and nobody seems to be trying to mine that for Mithril.
Yeah, I don't. I get there are a lot of examples that go against it. It's just maybe it's just the again, the Mithril is powerful and
it's certainly rare and therefore valuable.
Power corrupts. Then there's nothing inherently corrupting about the Mithril, like mystically. It's just that it's a powerful, rare mineral. And
that's more like what I think it is. But please keep trying to persuade me.
I will. But I feel like in Rings of Power, especially the Mithril, and I feel like in The Hobbit, it's just like it wasn't present much in the Lord of the Rings, except for they mentioned that Moria they mined too deeply looking for Mithril. But they still, I feel like in the extended universe, really took that and ran with it and made Mithril a little bit like a siren type of ore, where it calls to you and brings you to your doom. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't always do that, I guess, because you're right. The door, Frodo and Bilbo and Thorin, and the armor for that elven king that we know nothing, or king or prince that we know nothing about.
Yeah, that is Frodo's coat.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some whole... I will have a more complete... I have a lot more of the stuff to get through, but I will have a more complete theory of this or abandon it one way or the other.
Yep, we'll just have to keep collecting information.
I am definitely not giving up on this through line yet, though.
Up next, we have a language, lore, and letters.
So, we are still working through the prologue for the Fellowship of the Ring.
Yes. So, we are going to cover the rest of Concerning Hobbits. Mm-hmm. When we read, quote, "Those days, the third age of Middle-earth, are now long past, and the shape of all lands has been changed," end quote, we see the underlying assumption that Middle-earth is our world, but long ago, not another planet or another dimension.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we talked about this a little bit earlier in some episode a while ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it was quite the bombshell at the time.
Yep, it was. But here we have in the text, it implies it, but it doesn't shy away from it.
Yeah.
It's firm about the conception of what this is. Now, Tolkien, ever the philologist, cites linguist and literary evidence that the hobbits wandered westward.
Yeah, and I love this sort of thing.
Since it's called language, lore, and letters, I have to point out every time there's some language going on like this.
So far, of all the things I read, I really liked that he has charted linguistic evidence and the languages, I think, so far in this prologue are the most interesting thing to me so far.
Yeah. So I wanted to observe that Smeagol is from the Upper Anduin area.
Mm-hmm.
The earliest tales, we're told, also place the hobbits in the upper vales of the Anduin. So I conclude from this that Smeagol's era is about as far back as Hobbit memory goes.
Oh man, if only he was lucid enough to interview and record his early childhood memories.
Yeah, because he would know so much Hobbit lore that has been lost.
I feel like he would know it and just not tell people to get a kick out of it, though.
Yeah.
Like he would, or
he's forgotten it.
Or if he was held down and asked, he would just make up whatever he thought was funniest. I could see him doing that too.
Mm-hmm. Or whatever would
whatever
would convince you to let him go. But regardless, there are fundamentally 3 Hobbit families: Harfoot, Stour, and Falahide.
Yeah.
Now, I believe we speculated about the origins of the name Harfoot before at one point, right?
Yes. Yeah. My theory was rabbit was the origin for har, like hair.
According to Hammond and Skull's Reader's Companion, Harfoot does in fact come from Harefoot, or one with hairy feet. Mm-hmm. The Harfoots represent that quintessential hobbit, homey folk that live in holes. And I really hope that Rings of Power shows us some of the Harfoot-dwarf interaction that is mentioned in this prologue. Based on the line, quote, "The Harfoots had much to do with dwarves in ancient times. The Harfoots are also noted to be, quote, browner of skin, which is enough for me to say that there's textual evidence for hobbits of color."
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely an era that I thought that was interesting compared to the massive outcry and massive outcry might be putting it strongly, but seemingly like loud minority of people against that. I will say also first, yes, the Harfoot dwarf interaction is absolutely perfect for Rings of Power. The timeline is hard for me to track down because it says so they're inclined to settle in one place.
I would say that's probably Harfoots post their wandering days.
Yeah.
The wandering days are also mentioned in the prologue as well.
Yeah, they were mentioned earlier, but they still prefer to settle in one place. So I think it's kind of interesting, maybe on purpose and sort of a dramatic irony of sorts, that the Harfoots are convincing the Stours that you don't need to be settled in one place, you could leave. You know? Yeah,
you're right. That is a bit of a role reversal, you might say.
Yeah, but I think this is almost like a broader, it's a good like commentary on the nature of history and recording, because the Harfoots are known for settling in one place, but long time ago they weren't like that at all. But by the time that the prologue for the Lord of the Rings was written in the Middle Earth canon, right, that they were known for that. Mm-hmm. It's just showing the discrepancy of how different things were in time. But it's hard to track down because they says they like to settle in one place, but they're also historically interacted with the dwarves. So I want to see more of this, but I'm having trouble fitting some of these pieces together in my head with Rings of Power so far.
There's definitely a lot of chronology issues with how Rings of Power.
Well, you said that it has just thrown out like a lot of the timelines in the Silmarillion and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly, which I don't really have a problem with. I like seeing a woven through story. That's fine by me.
Yeah, I mean, the compression you definitely get a lot from.
I think the biggest fault with the time compression is probably with Numenor. We're going so breakneck fast right now with Numenor's moral decline that it feels rushed. Yeah,
I don't know. I'll have to think more about that. I complain about Numenor a lot, but I do like how fast things are falling apart. It's kind of...
Let's save this for the next segment.
An interesting train wreck, yes.
So I want to give equal treatment to all the Hobbit families. Since we talked about the etymology of Harfoot, I want to talk about the etymologies of the other ones. So Stour literally means large or strong. So it makes sense that they're described as broad and heavier in build.
Got it.
Smeagol comes from the Stour family line, which explains why he was in a fishing boat, considering that we hear that they prefer flatlands and riversides. Mm-hmm. The Stours were most friendly with men. Later in the prologue, it mentions that the Stour descendants who live in the Marish sometimes wear dwarf boots. And Stours are the only hobbits who grow facial hair. Next, Falahide literally means pale skin and is meant to sound deliberately archaic, from fallow meaning pale or yellowish, and hide referring to skin, although both parts of this word have fallen from use or lost these meanings. Mm-hmm. The Falahides were most friendly with the elves, had a proclivity to language and song, and were known for their relative adventurousness.
So I'm curious about how there's these three different kinds of hobbits. Each of them have a race, another species that they liked, right? They had, Harfoots and the dwarves, Stoors and the men, and the Falahide with the elves. I wonder what could be implied or expounded upon based off of this.
My gut reaction is to say that they take on characteristics from their association with the with members of those races.
Yeah, but so the Harfoots, I think he mentions a bit that they are stockier because they're friends with the dwarves, basically. Like, that's not typically how things work.
Our impression of stocky dwarves, I think, is also somewhat adaptation influenced.
Is it? Yeah. And
Not entirely, but I think, I mean, you got Bomber, who's canonically very large, but I feel like some of the stockiness is adaptation influenced. Still, the dwarves are matched up to the Harfoots. Mm-hmm. So I noticed that the Harfoots, who are not the stocky ones, the Stoors are the stocky ones, but the Harfoots, they like to live in holes, and dwarves like to live in caves.
Yeah, well, so the cultural stuff is definitely there. Like the men, the ones who are with men like boats, the ones who are with dwarves like holes, and then the ones that are with elves like singing or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what makes
I'm,
sense a lot to me.
And that's what I'm seeing in there.
I felt like when I was reading through, there was also physical descriptors that they were different too. And I'm wondering if it's like sort of like the company you keep and the actions you take like start to affect like I was wondering how this like plays in with the elf orc thing. Like the hobbits that hung around the dwarves were slightly more dwarvish because they let dwarven culture influence their culture and the metaphysics of all of that. Mm-hmm.
I don't really see any physical influence here that I would say is a pattern, except perhaps that the Falahides are typically taller.
Yeah.
And height is generally a pattern in Tolkien that indicates greatness.
Yeah.
But this has, like, so the Falahides are taller in the same way the elves are taller, but Faramir is tallest in his group because he's the leader. You know, it's more than just this instant. Height is a greater pattern.
Yeah. Understood.
But yeah, I don't see a lot of physical characteristics, say, between the Harfoots and the dwarves, but I see cultural similarities of living in the ground.
Yeah.
And I would bet it's the Harfoots who are probably most likely to craft items from this. That's just my headcanon. But that would follow from Harfoots being associated with dwarves, that maybe Harfoots are better at crafts.
Yeah.
So writing began with the elves. It was passed to humans, and then passed on to the hobbits. At about the same time that hobbits were picking up writing, hobbits also began to use the common language speech known as Westron. Westron is derived from the language of the Númenóreans called Adunaic, and the Red Book of Westmarch was composed in Westron.
Yeah, he explicitly says that common speech, also known as Westron here. This is like where he establishes the name for common speech.
Yep.
I love that the hobbits, I find it absolutely fascinating that they had their own language that died out too, that we have no knowledge on, that was never written down.
Yep, just not attested.
Just lost to history.
Yep.
So it goes on a bit. I put these notes in between. They don't really correspond to any of the notes that you took, but they mentioned that they charged the hobbits with the maintenance of the bridge and roads in the land that they stay in.
Yep.
And I thought this was interesting because we had a question about how the Harfoots who built their roads, maybe somehow they do build the paths they walk in Rings of Power.
I really liked your application of this to that issue. Mm-hmm. I was reading that this was a pretty normal arrangement between a king and his subjects.
Yeah, like if you're going to live there, just take care of the roads. Like that makes sense to me too, yes.
Yeah, in the book it says, these are traditional responsibilities of a people to their lord, which also serve the general good.
Yeah, there's also, so it kind of mentions that this kingdom, there's a couple names for it, but the easiest one for me to pronounce is North Kingdom. But North Kingdom, there's like a last battle at is it Fornost?
Yep.
They mention, and I feel like this is just like would be so great for a full like movie. Like,
this is why he's called the Witch King of Angmar.
Oh, who? The Witch King, you mean?
Yep. He's called the Witch King of Angmar because of this war, this incident.
Is there a lot more about this in the extended like Silmarillion and stuff too?
There's some stuff about it in the appendices.
In the appendices, yeah. So I just feel like the detail that they mentioned in this prologue, the hobbits say they sent archers to the aid of the king, but it wasn't recorded anywhere by men. And I get that like sometimes things just get lost to history records, but I feel like coming up for a reason for that it could be like the inspiration for a whole War of Rohirrim style film.
I'm here for it. I love it. I will go see this. I also have a plan for a D&D campaign that would include this as well. So like my own personal adaptation.
Yeah, that would be fun. That would be so cool.
So it's important to note that instances of the word corn in The Lord of the Rings, like cornlands in the prologue, refer to any sort of grain, not just maize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The word corn predated the discovery of maize. It existed in the English language before we discovered the yellow kernels in the New World, in the Americas. Mm-hmm. And maize was not common in England until after World War II. So corn still retained its very generic meaning in England for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have heard people, like, even before I knew about this whole thing, like, say barley, corn, and stuff like that, too.
Yeah, corn just refers to the primary grain of your area.
Yeah.
And so, exactly, barley corn, that would be that barley is your specific grain that you're talking about, but it's all corn.
Yeah, I've heard of other examples too, but yeah, that's the one that I think is most commonly still in parlance that I think anybody could pick up on, you know.
That's a great example. And we've mentioned earlier about hobbits throwing stones. Here we find a mention of its universality among hobbits. If any hobbit stooped for a stone, it was well to get quickly under cover, as all trespassing beasts knew very well.
Yeah, and then the way that this is phrased is so evocative of like just an old hobbit sitting on his back porch, and you know there's some sort of fox coming towards his hen house or something. It just picks up a rock and the fox hides away, runs away. He already knows to run because these hobbits don't miss with their stones.
Yep.
He mentions in this paragraph archery is good for them as well. We never see that, but I would like to see that as well.
I imagine that's why they sent archers to Fornost.
Yeah, probably. They probably tried to send stone throwers at first. They didn't go for that.
So, fun fact, not all hobbits live in holes. They also construct houses of wood, brick, and stone. Only the poorest and wealthiest hobbits live in holes.
Historically, that's what living in cities was like. Now it's only the richest, but only the poor and the rich lived in cities, and the middle class did not, you know. Mm-hmm. Like, you would either have to be in the slums or in the expensive penthouses, like in the Gilded Age and stuff like that, you know. Mm-hmm. Nowadays it's just the rich people, though, like for the most part, depending on the city, I suppose. But there's a lot of trends that are actually like that, where it's only the poor and the rich and not the middle class people.
Yeah. The prologue describes several towers between the Shire and the coastline. Quote, "The hobbits of the West Farthing said that one could see the sea from the top of that tower, but no hobbit had ever been known to climb it. Hammond and Skull draw a parallel between the tower in the prologue and the tower from the allegory in Beowulf, the Monsters and the Critics." Remember the tower that was torn down to find meaning in the stones?
Yeah, I noticed the parallel too, but I didn't have anything good, like I just, you know, heard tower and thought of the Beowulf story, so I didn't have anywhere to go with it.
Specifically, the similarity is in that the tower was built to look at the sea, but is not used for that purpose.
Yeah, I mean, the tower mentioned here in the prologue isn't used for any purpose, it seems like.
It was built to look at the sea, but the hobbits don't use it for that.
Mm-hmm.
The prologue also establishes the general fear of bodies of water among hobbits, though this is not characteristically shared among the Brandybucks.
Yeah, there's a few exceptions to the rules.
Yeah.
They mention a few paragraphs here at the end. They mention like the main characters, Frodo and Bilbo, they even say. And I know maybe, so if you're reading this contemporarily when it came out, and you know at least know who Bilbo is, but reading this like without any context would have been quite the struggle. Like, getting through and having all of this background context on hobbits when you don't know any of the hobbits yet and you don't have any idea for what a hobbit really is, this is your first introduction to them, it would have been probably mind-boggling to hold all together on the first read without any context if this is where I had started. I'm not really saying this is a criticism, though. I think on my first read, though, I would have to accept that I'm not going to understand a lot of this till my second read, though. I like books like that. It makes them rereadable, and I can imagine, like, if I'd only read this book, how much fun it would be to read this prologue again after finishing it for the first time and having any sort of bearing, you know?
Yeah.
But I could see it being off-putting to some people who are less adventurous with being confused and lost as I am.
I think that the prologue serves to accentuate the world building, that this is written by the translator and editor, as opposed to Frodo and Sam themselves, Frodo and Bilbo themselves.
Okay.
And it fits with the scholarly translation frame narrative.
Yeah. I think it's extremely like well thought out and intended and adapted. I just don't know personally how much I would have been able to grasp that, like, in a lot of this without like having a very strong understanding of a lot of these different terms, you know, in the world that they're in.
And I think a lot of the readers would be coming to this from The Hobbit, and so they would have some idea of what a Hobbit was.
They'd have a bit. Yeah, I imagine a lot of them probably, a lot of the, in the 50s, big fans of The Hobbit who went out and bought Lord of the Rings absolutely got a kick out of this too. And, you know, I'm sure Tolkien cared more about catering to those fans than the general public, right?
I think he cared about writing what he wanted to write.
Yeah. I don't know his relationship, but I think Tolkien probably got a kick from people who really liked and respected his works and didn't have too many questions. Yeah,
there's a quote somewhere about some parts that are loved by some people are hated by others, and parts that are hated by others are loved by some others still, and he can never understand how people are so impressed by different things.
Yeah. Yeah, I think any sort of feedback we've seen he's not great with. But I think he definitely would have, like, if there was anybody who really loved The Hobbit, he definitely would have cared more about what they thought than, like I said, the general public or something like that, at least.
Well, speaking of opinions regarding people's media, let's talk about The End of All Things. Traditionally, we've done a little sum up when we finish a segment like this. We come to the end of Rings of Power, what we have anyway. So let's sum up some of our opinions about the show. Who was your favorite character?
This is really hard for me to, if we're talking, so from both seasons all together, by the end of it, I really have to go with Elrond, but I would have not said that just watching season one.
Yeah, I agree. On the, overarching pattern of this, my favorite character, I'm going to have to go with Sauron.
Sauron, that is a very good choice. Very strong choice, I feel like.
Yeah, I don't like the fact that Halbrand is Sauron, and I don't like that Sauron is on a raft, but if I like a bunch of things about Halbrand from season 1, and I love Sauron from season 2. Yeah. So overall, despite how much I hate those particular aspects of his storyline, I think I'm most excited when someone named Sauron is on the screen.
Yeah.
For most of the time.
Yeah, I don't know. It was really hard. There's a lot of strong characters.
Mm-hmm. Who is your least favorite character?
I am having trouble parsing this out like I always do. I'd say my least interesting to watch things unfold, even though I like him as a person so far, I just feel like see a lot of the scenes with Elendil. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, I like Elendil's personality, but as a character in the show, a lot of the scenes he are in just fall flat.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, it's easy to pick a least favorite character who's like Waldrag, who's an annoying and a jerk. He's at least fun to watch at times. It was cool to see his armor glow up, but Elendil's story and stuff like that, it's just been hard to kind of keep a beat on and see what he's going with and stuff, you know?
I think Elendil would have been my other choice for favorite character.
But I get that because he has kind of like that, he stands strong in the face of evil and unapologetically this whole time he's been doing that, and I respect that, and it's at times come through, but just, well, I mean, maybe when we get to storyline I can go a bit more into it, but it's just some of the scenes I just didn't get his motivation, why he was fighting for what he was fighting for, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's probably a rose-tinted vision that I have with the lore of Elendil.
Yeah, and you know a lot more about Elendil from the greater works.
Yeah. I think my least favorite character will be Nori.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's so surprising. I loved Nori.
Well, let's use this as a transition to talk about our least favorite storyline.
Sure. Yeah, I think both of us, because I picked Elendil because I did not like the Númenórean storyline
and
at all.
I picked Nori because overall I think the Harfoot storyline is the weakest.
Yeah, I wanted to even, I was like trying to go back and forth, like who's most emblematic of the issue with the Númenórean storyline, and I didn't want to say Muriel. She had like, she's an interesting tragic character at least. Elendil I picked to be emblematic of the Númenórean storyline is just because it's like he kind of always was like the neutral, like the good guy Númenórean, and I don't understand the Númenóreans' motivations or going back and forth why they're deciding as a whole to do stuff. It's very confusing at times. Mm-hmm. I at least understood the Harfoot storylines, so I'm curious to see what you didn't like about it.
Generally, I just found the dialogue to be subpar. It was, I found it to be one of the worst parts. I found it less rewarding than everything else in the show because it is so off script. Like, I know what's supposed to be happening in Númenor. I have something to work with my imagination when the show falls short.
Got it.
But there isn't anything to fill in those gaps for me with the Harfoots, and so when there are instances of mediocre storytelling, it doesn't have the better work to back it up.
I will say for your least favorite storyline, it doesn't tie into the story as much as the other ones do at all.
Yeah, not yet.
Mm-hmm. There was the one scene at this end of season 1 where they were dealing with the repercussions of what the other story did to them. Right, mm-hmm. They had the grove of trees that were destroyed by Mount Doom.
Yeah, it's not that it's entirely,
but that was about the closest actually it came to, and it's never been the other way where what they're doing affects anybody else in the world yet.
Yeah, exactly. So it's pretty easy to pick that out without affecting the rest of the story.
Yeah. No, if you like I feel like, I don't know, yours would be a pretty simple fix. You could just prune that branch and the rest of things would go smoothly so far.
Actually, the one thing I would change about Rings of Power would be to make Gandalf Saruman instead. Yeah. I'd keep the Harfoot storyline and just make him Saruman.
That is a beautiful choice. I think, I don't know exactly what they need to do. They need to somehow make the Númenórean storyline work better, is all I can say, too. Because it's
and I think the biggest advice I have for the Númenórean storyline would be to I think this is where the time compression shows the biggest effect, because the fall of Númenor is supposed to take place over centuries, and we're getting a very rapid moral decline here.
I think that they could make the rapid moral decline work, but they have to explain stuff a bit more stringently. Like, I from the start, I was confused about their distrust from the elves, and if it was a distrust that caused this issue over centuries, that's one thing, versus, like, it seems like they all of a sudden got very up in arms about a lot of things, like, that they were just otherwise living fine with, like, not worrying about. Like, the elves, and then that also means the Palantir, like, all of this suddenly, like, becomes something that, like, it seemed like at the start was just like under the surface, like bubbling, and then it explodes over for no reason. Like, I feel like there needs to be more inciting incidents for a lot of the actions that happen with the Númenóreans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just a lot more explanation.
Especially if things are going to be happening that much quicker, or I guess like somehow like the time compression is the cause of it. but you can't uncompress the timeline because it's got to run in parallel still now that you've done that.
Yeah.
So you have to think of some other ways to make it work.
It just needs some more screen time and some more explanation.
It had a lot of screen time, though, and I just...
It was actually very underrepresented a lot of times.
It felt like it dragged on. I don't know, maybe it's just because I didn't like it.
Yeah. What was your favorite storyline?
I liked anywhere Galadriel was. Even though she wasn't my favorite character, whatever she was doing felt like the most pressing thing.
Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed...
Actually, I take that back, because when she was in Numenor, I didn't feel that way. So Galadriel, after she's gotten back to Middle-earth, I feel like that was the best storyline, if you can count that as a storyline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to say the moral ambiguity of the Elven Rings is what I am most invested in this show.
That is very interesting. I almost don't want to pick that as my favorite storyline because I feel like that one could be disappointing.
That's my favorite storyline. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I almost am tempering my expectations.
Yeah.
Because I think there is a lot there.
So how do you feel that Rings of Power compares to the New Line Cinema films?
Yeah, I mentioned this in my notes without even being prompted. And then I kind of explained it in the back of this episode too. But all in all, most of it's not even close. It's not even close as good as the New Line Cinema movies. It doesn't feel like it's even trying for that really most of the time, though. I respect that out of it, but the season finale for season 2, the last couple episodes, and I think that this is a smart idea from the show creators. It felt like they tried to go for it and actually hit it a few times. And I feel like if you're making a show, it can't always be as intense or as amazing as Lord of the Rings movies, right? Like there has to be arcs where it's a little slower or more dull or something like that, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think for your finales, you can go for that. I don't think they hit it anywhere in season 1 too much. But like end of season 2, there was at least 3 scenes where I was like, this is as good as the New Line Cinema movies. And when it's not that way, it can't always be that way, and I respect that. But season 1 is a bit less cooked through, right?
I definitely agree about your observation about the trajectory of the show, that it started off a lot weaker, season 2 became a lot stronger. Mm-hmm. I think my opinion about Rings of Power in relation to the New Line Cinema movies is that it hits an uncanny valley for me. Let me explain. Rings of Power makes a lot of direct reference to the New Line Cinema movies. Yes. There's references here and quotes there and things shot exactly the same over there. It is definitely asking us to think about the New Line Cinema movies. You even said that you thought maybe that it existed in the same canon universe as the movies even.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that could be the case.
And then it falls short. And like you said, maybe it's not even trying to be the same thing as the movies. Mm-hmm. But when it's making us think of the movies so frequently, I think that it undermines my perception of it.
Do you think they should lean less into the movie? I think that
either make it all more like the season 2 finale, and Elendil pulling out Narsil was an awesome reference. I loved that. It landed really well. But there's so many weird lines transposed or something shot similarly, and I don't understand the parallel. So I either make things a lot higher quality, try to go for that epic feel, or don't ask us to continually think of these epic movies.
I think that, and I kind of was getting at this with my answer again, but the solution to your problem, again, is just go for it just for the season finales and make it more like its own thing for the other 6 episodes. Mm-hmm. Maybe give the first episode kind of that extra oomph too, maybe. So, but you just can't. Maybe they're trying to go for it every episode and it's not working. Is what I feel like, you know. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of scenes where it's just like this doesn't feel like it needs to be like a Lord of the Rings movie. Like when they're trying to figure stuff out and do politics and talking and stuff like that. There's scenes like that in the Lord of the Rings movie, but there's not as much of the show as there is this. The balance is off. It just doesn't work. But the big big emotion scenes kind of get there. It's just I kind of get what you say with Uncanny Valley because there's so much of it that is not there too.
How do you feel that Rings of Power compares to your perception of what I called the core of the original? Obviously, you haven't read a lot of Tolkien's actual works, but you've read important documents like On Fairy Stories and the letter that references the core of the original even, and some of these important things that give you an insight into what Tolkien intended with a work, even if you haven't read the work itself yet. How do you feel Rings of Power represents the spirit that makes Lord of the Rings special?
Yeah, I think mostly I got this through like asking about things that were based off of something that Tolkien had written. And anytime I had asked you, is this something that is from the lore? A lot of times, at least, I was asking you because it seems like something that was well adapted. And then I found out it wasn't an adaptation. It was a choice they made on their own. I wish I had any specific examples to give you of when I did this for Rings of Power, but I know I've done it pretty much every episode. I think basically is what I'm saying is, even though there were a lot more times where he said this isn't in the lore and it doesn't make sense, there were a lot of times where I feel like it kind of bridged the gap between adaptation and lore in a nice way. There were a lot of times where he explained something to me, I was like, oh, so it wasn't lore, but they kind of had to explain it in a way, and they did it, and they definitely changed some of the source material in some ways that are kind of hard. I don't think the timeline compression is a big deal, but maybe like the difference between the Rings of Men and Rings of the Dwarfs, that's kind of hairy and up in the air still. But they made a difference, and I feel like that difference does still tell a story that feels like a Tolkien-esque story about like decay, like the Elven rings that made first. They're the least corrupted, and there's the least of them, and then the dwarven rings where they have a different story with a different amount of decay and a different amount of physical amount of Sauron in them, and then the rings for men, their story of creation was filled with violence and have the most amount of Sauron physically in there. That feels very like it belongs in Tolkien's cosmology, even though I learned just today it wasn't,
Yeah.
So I feel like they do a good job a lot of times.
I'm going to echo my previous observation that Rings of Power has an upward trajectory. I think the core of the original is better represented in season 2 than it is in season 1. And like you said, there's a lot of good things to be said about this. I like a lot of what they're doing with the Rings of Power, which is the name of the show, and gets screen time in season 2. That's why season 1 feels so off.
We don't
have Rings of Power.
I feel like they should have, and maybe it spoils the big surprise at the end of season 1. They should have mentioned that the forge that Celebrimbor and Gil-galad were for the Rings of Power. That should have been known from episode 2 or something, I feel like that would have at least colored my perception of season 1 a lot differently. And because I remember asking over and over, like, why do they need a forge? I didn't get the elf story at all, but and maybe I should have put 2 and 2 together from the title of the show, but I feel like knowing that this is the story of the creation of these great and corrupt rings, and it was starting with these shady political dealings, would have been a bit better.
Definitely. Overall, though, I think I need to hold my judgment on this question more than to just say that there's a lot to be said for season 2 and much less to be said for season 1. To really see where this is going, because I could see my opinion being very heavily influenced depending on what seasons 3 through 5 hold. Even though I am cautiously optimistic about where season 3 could bring us, it could also bring us to terrible places, and I'll say the core of the original is not represented well at all.
They could, between the last, we're not even halfway through, the last 3 seasons could undo everything season 2 did, and they could go back and explain away stuff to the point where season 2 is not even good with the context of those seasons,
Yeah,
and it could be so bad it could ruin season 2 even.
It really could. What I will say is that I feel like every time there's a layer of more explanation, I generally like it more, though.
Yeah.
And I feel that this is kind of like how animes feel to me.
Yeah.
Animes tend to start you off in a weird place and then give you more and more explanation until finally you have the entire picture that's been drawn out as it's doing the slow world building.
Do you mean like long-running shonen type animes?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can see what you mean.
And this type of writing style kind of feels that way to me.
Yeah, I definitely... That's a weird comparison, but it works so well.
So, let's talk about how we feel about Season 3. I already said that I was cautiously optimistic. I hope that Rings of Power continues its upward trajectory. I hope Season 3 blows us away. Mm-hmm. And I'm really going to pin my hat on that hope. What do you hope to see?
I hope to see... I hope to see more... Okay, I don't know. I don't have any order, but just some things. I hope to see Isildur become even more like the great hero. I want a lot with Isildur. I want to see I think they might be at the point by the end of the season, Sauron creating the One Ring and what he has to do to make that. If the trajectory of how he created the other rings or anything, he's gonna have to do something very horrible.
Yep.
Like human sacrifice, maybe. I don't know, but also that I feel like that would be a pretty big change, right?
That's a great change, though.
Like
no, that's a fantastic change.
Yeah. Like I feel like something crazy like that. I don't know. Maybe that's where Theo's going to end up. He's going to be sacrificed to make the ring. I don't. That would be a weird arc for him, but I could see it working.
Oh,
like there's a lot of things I hope to see. I hope maybe we could see something with Sauron that isn't the Dark Wizard, which you said won't happen, but seeing what Sauron's doing and getting a chance to beat him before he's evil, since the stranger's not him. I want to see more of what the Elven Rings are going to do. Like you said, that's a big question on Season 3. I want to see more of Galadriel, because I feel like she's at the Battle of the Last Alliance, right? Or no?
I don't believe there's any mention of her being there.
No, and I don't think she was in the prologue either, now I'm thinking about it. But I want to see...
She was not in the prologue, and I don't think there's any mention of her being there in the books.
I want to see a good reason why she isn't there. And I hope they don't just say she was there the whole time, because I feel like it's something they would have shown. Like, maybe that wouldn't be Season 3, maybe it'd be 4 or 5. But like, I want Galadriel to kind of have like a downfall or a depressive slope or something. Like... The sad is like in her coming out of it and stuff too, but I feel like she definitely lost pretty heavily. Mm-hmm. She lost the rings. She lost a lot in these last few seasons.
Yeah,
there's a lot. I'm a little bit like you said. I know that my biggest fear is still Sauron being the Dark Wizard, and I don't trust it until the show's over. At this point, just because they are leaning so heavily on the aesthetics, it scares me.
That's an interesting... Oh, you mean Saruman being the Dark Wizard?
Excuse me, yes. Saruman being the Dark Wizard. It still is my number one fear, despite that interview.
But hang on. What if this is genius? What if the Dark Wizard is Sauron in a different timeline? Like
expound. I don't understand.
Well, no. I guess this doesn't work because the volcano killed the halfling trees, so that places us... parallel. I was thinking the storyline could exist entirely independently at a different time. Maybe it was a
fake out. Maybe they showed the scene of the volcano destroying the trees, but that they didn't lie, but it was an implication, and we went too far with it. To put it,
maybe they'll explain that scene away, and the Dark Wizard will actually be Sauron.
That would be interesting. And this is way in the future or something.
Yeah, like way in the future.
It could be the past, I guess, too. But the future would make sense more with the Gandalf timeline issue, too, right?
Yeah.
That would be quite interesting. That would be much better than him being Saruman. That's all I got to say.
I don't think it'll happen, but I love this idea now.
Yeah. And I mean, historically, Halbrand did go to Adar and say, "Help me destroy Sauron."
And Sauron has gone to people before and said, "Ally with me against me."
Yeah. He just did that to Adar, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be pretty good. That's our dark horse theory, is the Dark Wizard is Sauron.
Yeah. So I guess I most fear that it's going to take that turn of relying on, bad metaphors for cartwheels and paths of seawater, and that I just fear that those kind of things are going to overwhelm any other good stuff going on. So just please keep the writing good, please, please, please.
I could have used a few more cartwheel mentions.
What are you most excited for season 3?
I think Isildur again, because he's definitely going to be around. I don't know. I guess I can't assume that, though.
I'm most excited for getting to review episodes with you as they come out.
Yeah, that is going to be quite exciting. We're going to be really kind of in the dark here. I mean, I guess it won't be that different for me, but it might be very much different for you.
I'm going to hold off listening to anybody else's opinions about stuff until we can hash it out.
Yes.
And record. So I will know that I am presenting my own opinions and not influenced by other people. The last 2 seasons, I have listened to other people's opinions on stuff. So
yeah, I mean, you've seen season 2, and we're listening to podcasts before this podcast was but an idea, you know?
Exactly. But upcoming for season 3, I'm excited to entirely form my own ideas with you. Mm-hmm. And good or bad, regardless of how this season goes, that will be fun.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I've already been doing that, but I will keep doing that, definitely. I will not read I don't listen to any Lord of the Rings podcasts currently, but I won't consume any content about the episodes as they come out until we talk about it.
So where we are headed in the podcast from here is that we have a special for Lord of the Beans planned up next time. It's on YouTube. Feel free to have a watch and come listen to us talk about Lord of the Beans for a while. And then after that, we have the actual Lord of the Rings text.
Yeah, we're getting slightly more academic.
Yeah, we got to transition to literary analysis and not just film criticism.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting transition.
Yeah, so bear with us as we learn how to critique literature.
Or at least observe literature.
Fair enough. You can follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram through the links in the description. Please follow, like, and subscribe on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and other major podcast platforms. To have your question or comment featured on the podcast, please send an email to shirepost.ringsandthings@gmail.com.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please consider contributing to our efforts through the Patreon link in the description.
A hearty hobbity thank you to our first supporter, Lori J. from Florida. We are deeply grateful for your support.
And a special thank you to our editor and spiritual producer, Stephen Jeffrey. And thank you for listening.